Hi, everybody on Zoom. How's the audio today? We good, Judy? Okay, all right. Welcome everybody to our regularly scheduled September board meeting. We've been meeting every month this summer, and I think that's a good thing. At least the weather's 5 degrees cooler than it was. Let's see. I think we have everybody, so obviously a quorum, so let's declare that. And I would like to Mike Mara.
Yes,
So
sir.
Mike Mara from the Q condos is here as a guest, and Jamie made contact with him, so welcome, sir. And with that said, we circulated the minutes. Were there any edits, corrections to minutes? Hearing none between Judy and Patrick, who did a phenomenal job on those. We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Approved by Bob Perillo and a second by Peter Fanning. And all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Clerk, treasurer's report.
Yes, our balance in the Seacoast checking account is $2,734.15. $2,734.15. That's after paying Parsons for the second quarter and Sheila Connell for the survey.
Okay.
And a few extra dollars thrown in to help pay off the our wild apricot.
Okay. So we're fully paid on wild apricot?
No, we still have more to go.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. At this point, I think everybody attending would know we typically have a guest speaker. We did not do that this month, and the reason is CCNA is having a summit meeting in a month in which they wish to, and it was circulated in your board packet, they wish to have a discussion about issues for consideration, a consolidated. And as we know, with those of you on Zoom, somebody's not muted, please. So they are having a summit in about a month, and the invitees of that meeting, there's one person per neighborhood, so I'm going to represent DSCA. So what we're going to do today is go through a preliminary list of what, from a DSCA standpoint, we feel are resident issues for consideration. We've got 3 weeks or so to refine it, so we don't have to get it all done today. But we should make a credible dent as a group, and the rest we can do via Zoom or emails or whatever. The end goal is that I've got a document that I can take to the summit representing our view. Now, I think Ken rightfully points out that just because we input into CCNA doesn't preclude us from having other issues in a coherent way because of the uniqueness, shall we say, of downtown, where we feel we're about 23% of the city's population in less than 2 square miles. So that said, as a starting point, I also sent around our mind map that we had developed earlier in the year to refresh your memories of something in a pictorial form as a starting point. And Patrick, you shared and I shared in the board path some issues from 2020, and I really like the format that Patrick has used in his business life and now is where We'll describe the issue, maybe in dot point form, the impact of that issue, and some potential solutions. Patrick, what's a good way to go about this? You took a stab at modifying a couple of the issues from 2020.
Right, but I mean, you handed out your kind of composite list, which I think it might be good to kind of go through all, you got eight of those, and just see how many, kind of, what's the flavor of the, is that the top issue, is it? And part of this, I guess the question here is, of issues, which are those that are broad enough that we can take the CCNA for a broader city versus which ones are downtown urban specific that we keep CCNA informed, et cetera, but we really need to push those directly. I know that's been argued here that there are certain things that are unique to the downtown urban environment and should be argued on behalf of the DSCA.
Right. And by the way, when I did my list, this was not intended to be in priority or whatever. It was freestyling, so to speak, on this. I've got a few extra copies. If you guys have it. Not that I have enough for everybody. And I should also recognize Vice Mayor Albert has joined us. Oh, yeah. I handed out to me. Okay, just to go through this, and we've got a post-it board over there if we want to use a magic marker. One of the broad categories I just call walkability, and this is a half-baked idea. I think Patrick flushes it out further, but the idea of walkable, and that would involve, canopy trees, wire seats, sidewalks, better lighting potentially, and so forth. There's one categorical issue, if that's the right word, or desire to do even better. And one of the things here that I find in advocating for more canopy trees is one of the issues we face all the time is either we don't have enough space in width, or there's something underneath, or there's something above. And I've in personal experience with finding 80% of the time, there's a reason why we can't do it. So some of the solutions here might be, shall we say, more of a commitment and a commitment from Public Works and maybe some creative ways to fund rerouting of water lines or whatever. But we do know that we have a new EDCM in the works and urban forestry program. We don't know exactly where that's going to stand funding-wise, but there's one category which is called walkability.
David, I have a couple of, maybe somebody would think these are off the wall ideas about that, but one of the things that I've noticed with the trees and the sidewalks, particularly up there where the Wells Fargo Bank building is on Main Street in Osprey, the trees have caused the sidewalks to heave quite a bit. And the city has, in some cases, come through and ground down seams in the sidewalks. In some cases, they've had to take up the sidewalk and replace it. And it seems to me that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with if we get a lot of trees in sidewalks. And the risks to the people, the pedestrians using the sidewalks. The other is, and it occurred to me during Idalia, with trees being knocked over by the storms, should we think about the location of trees so that they don't damage structures?
Yeah, and I think that's the balancing act. In some cases, root barriers can be considered, depending on the type, they can be relatively expensive. But the issue, we've got a dilemma here on, we want trees, in some cases they're problematic to to plant in given locations. I think there's an opportunity for.
Yeah, I think it's important to have some conditions attached to it, because otherwise it makes it look like we want trees everywhere. And in some places, it's
Right.
could be dangerous, or there could be risks to property or individuals.
Or if the city writes a spec, it's that if you're gonna plant a deciduous tree along this way for shade,
They
it's
have,
gotta be planted with certain conditions. You just can't.
and they do have a policy with regard to distance, that I think, in
But
some
it's
cases,
the
there's
risks
there's
of-
no real.
It's the risk to the pedestrian and the structures adjacent to the trees that I was thinking.
That brings up an excellent point, Kim. It is a risk issue. In fact, right now, after getting through this past summer, it is a health and safety risk to maintain a unwalkable city with 15% of the sidewalks.
It's a different issue.
No, it is a
I
risk.
know, but
And
it's
the
a different
trees
issue.
is a risk. So the point is, a mitigation strategy that says we do need, not want, we need more shaded sidewalk from trees that also help protect the air, clean the air, not just shade from 18-story buildings. At the same time, what is the ROI of if you put in the tree grade and you keep the roots where they're supposed to go, that may cost another $5,000 per tree, but that tree is going to live longer.
It's a lot of money.
Well, when you're doing the whole sidewalk area,
If it's for 50 years.
and those trees can live for 100 years.
Yeah, but had those trees lasted 50 years?
Well, the ones that
I
do,
don't
I'm
think
not
you'll
saying.
find that's the case.
The point is that there is people out there who have done the estimates and show the benefits to that. And part of that risk equation is, where does the value of the safety of the citizens come in? If it's a zero value, then you're absolutely right, spending the extra $5,000 to contain the roofs and so forth. But if you're saying you want those sidewalks to never have enough people from that, well, what does that cost over 5 years of them fixing sidewalks?
You know, there's another.
Those are the down the road costs, and if you can mitigate those costs.
I would invite you to go to that block on
I
Main
know,
Street.
I've seen them right on,
Yeah,
has
I
a
know,
problem.
and there's quite a bit of cost there.
I walk and I trip over that.
And there are a couple of trees that the roots are that high above the sidewalk.
So one, rather than discussing in total detail each of them, if we could possibly agree on a list of categories, so forth, and then we work to define, debate, whatever.
It seems like the setbacks are huge. Setbacks are huge, right? Because then you have setbacks to any new construction that we have, in order to allow for tree growth, tree green space.
Setbacks in downtown are zero.
Well, I'm just saying, going
It has to be on
forward,
city property, the area is where we can put street trees on the applicant's property. That's not what we're talking about. We're trying to look at street trees, the things that the city has a say-so in. Now, when a new construction goes in,
well,
the developer can have a say in the trees that get planted in the amenity zone outside their property. Is what I understand. So I don't mean
So,
to mix up.
I'm kind of looking at this as a bigger picture, right? We're not just looking at the downtown. Aren't we supposed to be speaking in a broader term,
I
right?
think for the purposes of this meeting, I think this is just.
Okay, so we want to stick, okay, so I still would maintain that as we're looking for new development, whether it be in the Rosemary district, or you talk about burying wires or what's going on underneath the street, a lot of that, I think, has to, if it's thought up in the future or up front, a lot of that can be mitigated, right?
And actually, trees can be pruned in such a way that they're less vulnerable to high winds. I remember in Pennsylvania, I have a lot of trees on my property, and the tree surgeons would come through and say, okay, we can take that so much, and,
So let's move on a little bit, but one opportunity here, I think, and I've spoken to Marlon about it, and I think he's in agreement that one of our opportunities is a better coordination
I'm going to, just,
between some of the various city departments. So Public Works is in sync with the arborist, is in sync with development services, is in sync with engineering. And that it is problematic, but there should be some selected opportunities that will continue to try and work on. Community input for new projects, and I think there's breaking news that the vice mayor.
waving his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's all right.
Okay, I'm sorry, Peter.
I just want to comment that I think it's important, the discussion is very important that we just had. Because you don't want to make a recommendation that you don't understand some of the problems with the recommendation. But I think to stay out of this, as many weeds as we just got into, we need to look at the overriding recommendation. It is good for the city and the quality of life to have canopy trees, and the more canopy trees you have, the better. That's our recommendation. The recommendation we're making to people who are going to implement this, and they need to have this discussion. And when that comes up, we need to be there when they're having that discussion. But I think if we pull every recommendation apart like we just did, we're liable to muddy the waters so much that we won't be able to swim on.
And I think possibly a reaffirmation of the city green space, today's policy, which calls for canopy trees, when possible, basically.
So
It's the preferred implementation, but that preferred implementation can be overridden by city commissioner vote.
Right.
And other choices.
Okay, so, enough on walkability, we're gonna flush this one out. The second one is, kind of timely, community input for new projects and vice mayor. I don't know, how many of the board were watching yesterday's meetings? Anybody? Okay, all right. So you saw the discussion about, community workshops. And the vote was to make those, optional. And so, one of the, of course, we had some attendant issues related with, dare I say, people feeling somewhat disenfranchised or whatever the politically correct word is. They are optional, so one potential solution here is it was recommended by one of the commissioners, if I'm not mistaken, residents have the ability to approach the developers directly and see if they're an optional community workshop, can one try and convince developer X of the benefits of that. In addition to that, CCNA is working on I think they're calling it meaningful input kind of project. Any discussion on this as far as, is it one of our continuing issues from a DSCA resident standpoint? Yes.
I have a thought that isn't going to have any legs after I say it. So one of the, and I understand. I listened carefully to that part of the discussion. I was interested in the 3-2 vote, and I've also been interested. We've had people come and present to us here and seem to be agreeing that there should be some kind of input from the residents. Maybe they're just cognizant that we were residents, and it's a nice thing to say, but I think they really meant it. And I'm wondering if, rather than just make it an option for the developer, why we wouldn't have a opt-out for the developer. In other words, it's there unless the developer goes on the record to opt out of having a community workshop. They can opt out and say it's the cost, I don't want to have it, and then we can proceed. But just to give them carte blanche, we're not going to have one because right now you can count on the. I'm not going to say, but at any rate, an opt out would be better than a blanket option.
In what circumstances are you describing? If you're talking about the downtown code,
Yes.
that would require a zoning text amendment.
Again, I'm saying, I want to get the general concept on the table, that this is what the community residents want. They want community input. How that happens is somebody else's responsibility to make that work. And then at that point, we can get very much involved in helping them to do their job.
I had made a suggestion in an email to you earlier that I still feel like it may speak to that, but what prevents anyone from having a community workshop? I mean, we've had community workshops and look at who we had come to the table that were people that just, they just came.
What were you talking about? What meeting?
Well, it was the one that we had at the church. We had a DSCA put on a workshop.
We had a DSCA workshop.
Yeah.
Okay. The term community workshop is a defined term. It has specific rules that go to that versus any other community input. That's all.
So tell me more, Kathy.
Yeah.
So when we, and I've seen this play out in different scenarios, even with the MARC, let's just say, you have, people are concerned, a new development is coming in, what prevents a group like DSCA or an organization to come in and put on a meeting or put on a workshop, invite people to it, and you invite people to come from the city. It's theirs to say no to if they, it's theirs to come. They don't have to. They speak to the topic and to take questions from the people in the community. And there is something truth to what Peter says, though. I mean, an opt-out is an interesting idea.
Well, that's an interesting idea too, because the workshop we had, DSCA workshop that we had at the church, what was unique about that is that the decision makers were in the audience. And we were presenting the information and they were gathering it up, and several of them said after the meeting, this is good, I've learned something here, and it was a good, so I think we could make that recommendation as well.
Well, I think that's an important point, that the decision makers have to be a part of it, because otherwise it's just an opportunity for people to blow off their steam. And that misleads them into thinking that something is going to come of it, and it probably won't.
I would agree with, I totally agree with that.
So what we're saying, I think, is yes, we still want to, even though there's a 3-2 vote, we still want to encourage in any way we can community input. Whether you want to call it a workshop or something else, we're going to find as many ways to get input into these decisions as possible. Just because they voted 3-2 yesterday doesn't mean if we can get it back on the agenda in some form, but they won't vote 3-2 the other.
That's adopted now.
I know.
Well, the concern I had about that discussion, or our opposition, or our request for a community workshop, is that it could make us look like we're trying to prevent affordable housing. Knock it off. That is inappropriate.
I'm sorry,
Sit there
I'm
and
sorry.
bang the table
Well, I'm
because
sorry.
you disagree with something I
It's not a
said.
disagreement. Please continue. We never took a position.
You don't want me to
We never
continue.
took a position that said it had to do with, the reason was affordable housing was the intensity of use, but please.
That
continue.
comment even came up at the first reading of that zoning text amendment.
Yes.
And I think it was an appropriate comment. It makes us look like we're trying to prevent affordable housing or throw grenades or obstacles in the path of approval of affordable housing.
Okay.
So I think we need to be careful about that.
Well, I think, I personally feel, at least I can speak for myself, that I've gone out of my way in that guest editorial and say much desired, much needed attainable housing. So.
Well, your intent is fine, and I'm not arguing with your intent.
But it works.
But I think that it even came up, if you're only talking about this ordinance, this zoning text amendment, then you create the impression that you are against affordable housing. And I don't think we want to put ourselves in that position, because I don't think we are.
If we stay true to the mission of what DSCA does, you don't take a position, right? If we come more from an educational standpoint and more for the betterment of the downtown, doesn't that be our role to inform or to get people in the room that are gonna have an informed discussion? And it doesn't have to be, just because we wanna talk about streetscape doesn't mean that we're taking a position about it. It means we just wanna have a discussion about it and let people who might, I mean, we have a commissioner here today that we were especially invited, no, you come because you are wanting to know what's being discussed. And I think that kind of sets the tone for the meeting in and of itself. I mean, it could just be an informative. It's not, I'm not saying we take a position on anything, but it's for informed discussion. I mean, isn't that what a workshop is? I mean, wouldn't that be what a workshop is supposed to be if you want to take away the total technical jargon of a community workshop? Isn't that what you want to do?
Well, we did a information session or workshop or whatever, the one in the community
Yes, well,
foundations. And that
exactly.
was about the,
Worktown bars or something like that. It was about,
Yeah.
yeah, it was, that's what it was about. It was about
the zoning
rooftop,
text.
yes, yes.
Oh, the
So-
restaurants, bars,
Yes.
and
Did
nightclubs.
we take a position
No, we
on
just
that
hosted.
formally? We just
No.
hosted an informed discussion.
Well, I think the difference is on those or the sound ordinance or something
Sure.
like that is different from a project because we don't know the details of a given project, only the developer or their representative. So we know on the zoning text, we may have a draft that people have seen and people can talk about it and,
Sure.
whatever. But I mean, if we're involved anyway on a meeting to do with new project X, we don't have much, if any, information, right? Let alone, so we're talking about maybe rumors or whatever. I guess you could say if DRC materials were out and you had some drawings and stuff, but then again, you're playing with half.
Is there an
information.
example of a project that came into downtown where it was built without any kind of communication with the community? I mean, I can't think of
Lots of
anything.
Lots of them.
Yeah, I mean, but of a certain size or
Anything in the downtown zoning districts.
if they're compliant to code,
There's no community input required.
if they're compliant to code.
Right,
There's no rebuttal.
right.
Well, the community input
Bingo.
came from,
Bingo, if it conforms to the code,
that's where the
What does the
community
workshop
input came
discuss?
from, is from code, from the code. That's where the petition came from.
Okay, listen,
David?
yes,
Clarify a few things. In respect, Ken, I would like to clarify something. The point was made when David Lough and I, on behalf of DSA, went to a meeting with Lucy Panica, Steve Cover, Brian Chapdelaine, and I think,
Richard Harrison, Jim Lovegood.
right. We presented, and if I could very quickly show something, because I think this kind of gets to the heart of one aspect here. We tried to present a suggestion for how to address the need for community workshops when the intensity of use is increased. And contrary to statements made at city commission's meeting, the last couple of times it's there, downtown has at least 6 items when community workshops are required. There were statements made, projects being built in downtown don't require community workshops, don't have community workshops, when in fact, they do. And I'll try and blow it up here, but there's, at least 6 conditions there where it's required. And what was the suggestion that we took to them was to not include it in the affordable housing text amendment. We had a specific discussion. Ryan Chapman says, well, we'll just include it in that. We said, no, it would be better if you did not include it in the affordable housing for just the exact reasons pointed out. It would be better if it was put under the category here of section 4-201, where community workshops required. And it's where you have increases in intensive use through major minor conditional uses, which is the things with bars and so forth. So those are consider, you're gonna have 4 times the number of people. You're gonna have 3 to 4 times the number of materials being delivered, fixtures and everything to go in there, et cetera. So it's an intensive use, and under those conditions, not the public. The property, it's a property owner issue. The property owners who live within 500 feet, especially the adjacent ones, should have an opportunity to say. So that's where I'm suggesting is take the wording out of this, just, as you said, people that kind of want to voice a thing, those who are directly affected property owners. And we craft it as a property, existing property owners, they should have a right when the intensive use is dramatically increased.
Okay.
That's
All right,
that's
to
why we
Peter's point, this is a complicated thing, but can we agree that community input is a good thing? And that we should find ways within the votes of the commission and the intention of being a positive, adding value to projects and not just gripe sections.
Right.
Okay,
Could I say one more thing, David?
Yeah.
Could you check the provisions of the Live Local Act, the state's Live Local Act, before you do that, to make sure that there is nothing in there that prevents the local entity, the municipality, from having a community workshop? Because the Live Local Act intent is to simplify the process,
Right.
is to create efficiency in the process, to create speed in the process,
Okay.
instead of delaying the process.
Okay,
And that applies to when the developer wants 40%, not 11%, affordable housing. And that's what they said. They don't expect any developers downtown to go for 40% affordable housing.
okay, I'm not quite sure.
Whatever this tax
Sort
rate.
of prove to
Check
be
it out.
accurate. Okay. The next one is neighborhood representations at the DRC. Let's skip that. I think what has been communicated by Lucia is that the planner on the DRC for a given project is to be the liaison point for residents to input. As we know, residents may not speak at DRC meetings, but we can sure be in communication. I have on occasion been in touch with a couple of the planners, written to them, and tried to advocate for various things. And I think we want to reaffirm, if that's the right word. I don't know if this deserves a separate issues thing, because it may be folded into something else.
I think under the community input, you could simply say, and continue the staff of city development services plan. That's it.
Okay.
It's a good thing, continue it, please.
Okay, the next category here is what I call quality of life. And under that, I have lumped in, I'm going to use the word noise versus sound, sidewalk and alley cleaning. And for example, you might even, I asked this as a question, the terrible quality of Fruitville Road as a quality of life, economic detractor, connectivity, buster, and under the issues with noise, but the sound ordinance has been under development for 2 years. I'm being slightly facetious. And I believe that Mr. Fournier has said to bring it back. Now, the one contextual statement I will raise is the restaurants, bars, and nightclubs, CPAs, are working their way through approval. They're coming before the planning board on the 21st. And I think that Mr. Cover is adamant that sound isn't part of those. But I would submit that there's got to be a harmony, for lack of a better word, or interrelationship where there's no cracks, in between them, or there certainly, hopefully, no conflicts. So I think that it would behoove us that on the noise thing, that it is important to advocate for those things in the works for so long to be brought forward. Is there any discussion on this? Is that good?
I don't have anything about noise. I'm fine with what you said, but
Okay.
when you talk about terrible condition of Fruitville, do you mean functional condition or physical condition?
Physical condition, more, I mean, this is obviously very subjective, but as a entryway, one of the entryways into our city,
You know, you mean its appearance,
it's appearance.
appearance.
And then the other thing here, Ken, about Fruitville and wanting to move this forward for discussion now, is for the first time, we've got major condo projects being built along it. We've got two,
Well, should we say something about functional
oh,
condition?
okay, tell me.
Well, how the road functions, does it carry the capacity of traffic that we want? Does it allow for pedestrian usage? Does it allow for walkability?
Okay.
And those are functional issues rather than physical condition issues. Physical condition, I think of as potholes. Does that make sense?
I'm thinking in terms of Fruitville as an opportunity cost of a complete street as a
Well,
statement.
could we say that?
Yeah, okay,
Complete street.
all right, well,
Yeah.
I mean, is it such a missed?
Hello? Oh, you already got the word. I was going to give you a call.
Okay, mute, please, everybody, mute, please, if you're on Zoom.
You gotta be.
Okay. So can we agree on quality of life? And Peter, help me think
I'm
through
trying to
this.
think
slide.
of it, you know, you're into physical aspects. I mean,
Yeah.
physicality is the narrow sidewalk. I used to walk from Lemon to Orange all the time, and finally I realized I'm much safer going up the alley than going up the sidewalk.
Right.
Because the sidewalks are up this,
Yeah, right.
you know, and you can't pass anybody without stepping into Fruitville. So that's a physical aspect. The other, what Ken is talking about, you know, potholes and broken curbs and stuff.
Well, I'm trying to get away from words.
I know, I think
we do too much words.
Oh, okay.
So can't we just say complete streets?
I like the big streets.
Moving on to the next category of health and safety in traffic as issues, traffic calming, criminal behavior. I use that because in downtown we don't have terrible criminal, aggressive panhandling, you know, is, and pedestrian safety. We do know that there are to be more SPD foot patrol officers in the works. We'll be discussing later the City Watch program, the pilot thing that Peter and the Health and Safety Group are working on, and increased educational efforts to the extent those are helpful in pedestrian safety. One thing that came up, the next item, I guess it could come under community input, was input on the budget. And that was something that I spoke about at yesterday evening's budget meeting. Is the issue is in the current budgeting process, there is no opportunity that I see for residents of the community to have input into the budget. We may not speak at workshops. And then last night was too late. So I think there was a soft commitment of Mr. Brown last night to as the budget calendar for next year is developed, to put in another workshop or another meeting where there would be an opportunity for residents or somebody representing DSCA board approval to make recommendations. Another matter that I don't know, have an answer to, but an issue is that it seems like a number of our projects, our important capital projects that are in master plans, rely on the wish of getting grant funding to get them funded. And that's kind of a crapshoot of, are you gonna get the grant, or when you're gonna get the grant? Is it gonna come in my lifetime, you know? And that's a challenge. I observed a couple things that I've tried to make the case of as a solution is multimodal impact fees that downtown projects have contributed to. In fact, the BASO they're starting their closings in 3 weeks, so that's 150 units. And each of those units contributes about $4,500 in multimodal impact. But those monies for which there is a dual nexus test required, what that means, subject to the lawyers, but is that an opportunity for us to advocate for that money? The other is TIF money. I know that Mr. Brown has now started to talk about the potential use of TIF money, for example, on the Boulevard Yards and other kind of funding sources. But where there's a legitimate project in a master plan, what kind of alternative sources can we find, not bet the farm with grants. And then the last kind of DSCA mission and financial model, let's get the plan down the road on the discussion of that. That's important that we need to reevaluate our mission. And somebody was talking about, you know, the ongoing struggle of when does DSCA weigh into an issue and when do we not. And I think we have tried to be careful, but there are some things that have gone on here. We commented on the process. For example, the Obsidian, I believe our position was the developer was asking for exceptions to the zoning, and that those exceptions should be carefully considered, not granting those exceptions, because what the developer seems to have done there is used interstitial speed. I'm going to use the word, excuse me, this is probably a little crass, but gaming the system, but with interstitial space, it's the same hand asking for exceptions. So that doesn't seem fair to me. It does not tick all the boxes, so it does not comply with the zone. It should not be used. Thoughts, comments, what? Patrick, you have a couple, if we want to just leave this meeting and come.
I've already done, I mean, I spoke to the issues that I wrote up, so however you want to finalize and come back with some draft or something before you take
So,
the CCNA.
Based on further discussion here, Patrick, Peter, I'm happy to work with folks on coming up with some draft documents in the simple stage for further discussion.
Sure.
We've got a few weeks. Are there any issues, categories that we're missing here as far as?
The only one, and I'm going to say it again because it seems to be my issue, and that is, and it's a citywide issue, the direction that our parking department's going in the addition of more spaces, more restrictions to parking, less opportunity for free parking. And I think this is an issue that it goes much further than downtown. It goes up to Hillview, it's a citywide issue. And I think it's an important issue, given the PowerPoint that I saw 2 weeks ago, of proposed changes. I'd hate to see all those changes go without a whole lot more discussion.
And Broxton Harvey is scheduled to be our guest speaker next month. So I hear you, and I also hear what Roger talks about is $3.5 million in revenue. So it is important. I would also observe in what Broxton has submitted so far, and he's not even addressing anything in the Rosemary. It's more focused, in St. Armand's, other areas of the city, but I would submit, I know there's a time bomb ticking in the Rosemary.
I'd like to park and eat in one of the new restaurants in Rosemary when they open, but I'm not going to find a parking spot anywhere near those restaurants so I can walk around.
So let's wrap this up for the moment. I will take this on to try and do something and I think the format that Patrick has used here and the brevity of these is nicely done. Yes.
I would just second Peter's suggestion that parking be one of the issues that we do address for that. And specifically on the issue of having a speaker for the meeting, I think I had sent you some questions, one of which is what has been the history of the revenue generated from the parking plan that had the input from, I believe, a committee, right, Roger? There was a parking advisory committee, and the plan that was put together, and it laid out, okay, we're going to charge these fees, and we're going to do stuff, and we're going to generate this much money over the next, whatever, 3 to 5 years. So that was the plan. What has been the actual over the last 3 to 5 years since that was put in place? I would like to see that, because in fact, they said that there's lots of free parking, and if that's going away, is that really the best places to take it away? I think there needs to be further review.
Okay, I think this is going to be, yes. Okay, let's move on then to the old business, our survey results, and hats off to Patrick, what you've done on this. So can you kind of talk us through where we are? And with your board packet, there was 4 pages.
Yeah, we can put that up so everyone can see it. Through that. So yes, we've had the committee working on this, and we now have our draft of the survey. And it is quite comprehensive. See what we're dealing with here in terms of the questions around that. Together there. And so this is all the data that will be provided in the report. So this is all the pages of the reports put together and summarize all the different responses. So you see how each condo is summarized there. We also have the spreadsheet from that I've started beginning to go back and do some summaries where you can say, okay, let's look at these numbers of, for instance, we said the percentage increase in maintenance fees over the last 2 years. Well, we also showed the age of the buildings. So I did a little survey. It says, does that average change if you look at the buildings over 30 years or the buildings under 30 years? And it did. The buildings over 30 years had a smaller increase. That was still a big increase overall, but it was the newer buildings, the ones in the probably 10 to 30 year range that we're seeing significant. Anyway, it's worth looking into. So there is some very interesting information coming out of there, and getting it sent out this week.
Just
to those 23.
Could we just back up for some newer folks? The survey was about 70 questions.
But these are the topics that were covered.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess that's from that. And then we did, here was, briefly, here is kind of the summary piece that we included in there. Yeah, that's just where, I think that's hit on the, when you see the percent increase that we're dealing with. Insurance is a big factor, but then everything else is being impacted around that in terms of the increases. And I think as we put it together, that should be factored in a way that the cost impact of living in Sarasota is not insignificant at almost any economic level. And there are people, especially in the older condos, who are being forced out. They are not able to sustain that percentage increases. Who were planning to maybe age in place. So I think it's beginning, there's an impact there. I don't know enough how to delve into that, but for those who would like to, and I would invite any of our associate members who have expertise in real estate and law and so forth, consider ways to, compare some of this numbers to other. Anyway, there's some valuable information coming out. We'll have that emailed out to those 23 condos that participate. Any questions from board members?
Actually, I think it's going to be a useful tool for, as boards are putting together their budgets for 2024, which we started officially yesterday here. And knowing where we fit into the matrix of maintenance fees, insurance, I think one of the questions that I would recommend for the next survey, hopefully in a couple of years, that the valuation of the building should be part of that consideration, because that correlates with insurance costs.
And so we did this 2 years ago, and then our vision is probably to do it in another couple of years, so we begin.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I think maybe narrowing it down some. We had a lot of details. Some of it in the policy areas where we wanted to, like, how do you do this policy, whether it's a pet policy or something else, EV policies, et cetera. And so some of that may be sufficient to say, here's one or two questions. If you want more details, the contact info for those who have that policy is in the list.
And for the future, this is in Survey Monkey, so modifying it is going to be relatively easier, while we do this. So, okay, and then, all right, any other discussion about that? No? President's report, I don't have really anything other than we talked about in the issues statement. I have attended yesterday's meeting, so I saw firsthand some of the discussions, and if you have questions about that, I would encourage you, everybody, to watch yesterday evening's budget discussion, because there's about 10 minutes or so where I speak and what Marlon says after, and some of the commissioners say, that I think is useful in the community input, looking forward. Kathy, anything?
No, I don't,
No? Okay. Committee reports, Ken, Arts and Cultural.
Yeah, I have a number of things. Well, since our last meeting, the City Commission adopted the Public Art Plan. As I've said, it's a very complex document with a very high cost index. Its major feature is a doubling of the developer's contribution to the Public Art Fund, which would go from 0.5% to a full percent. Surprisingly, I think there were 13 people who spoke during that discussion, commission discussion, and none of them opposed that, and none of them were developers. They were all people either representing themselves or representing arts groups in the city. One of the goals of the plan is to encourage public art throughout the city, not just downtown, which I think is a good idea, but the funding of it's going to be the problem. The major problem with the plan that I see is there's nothing about the acquisition process for public art in it. And for me, anyway, right now, the acquisition process is badly flawed and needs major work. And I was hoping that this plan would do that, but it doesn't touch it at all. Roundabout public art, we had a brief discussion about that once before. I watched the comments by Marlon Brown at the commission meeting about that. They've suspended putting public art in roundabouts. I got the impression from Marlon's comments that it had something to do with the state, the FDOT, but I'm not sure what.
Oh.
So I pulled up the FDOT design manual, and there's nothing in there that seems to prevent us from putting public art. In fact, there's an interesting term they use for public art, and it's community aesthetic features.
Ken, if I can help, my understanding of the FDOT issue was that the contractor had to be FDOT approved. All right, and it was, that would limit the number of contractors who could pour pad. I mean, it seems.
So that resulted in the suspension of the entire program.
Well, it would limit the number of contractors that would bid on it.
Anyway, it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear, hopefully.
These are installation contractors, not artists.
Yeah.
Contractors.
Installation.
Yeah.
And certain design standards that are different than the cities, and hence more expensive.
So is there an update on Gulfstream of what the plans are? Because the artwork is complete, or
I think that's undecided at this
what they're going to.
I doubt if the artwork's complete because the artist is not gonna sign a contract, he's gonna get money. The organizational meeting of the Purple Ribbon Van Wezel Task Force was on the 15th of August. Leanne Chung was elected chair. Leanne's a civil engineer. And Marty Hilton was elected vice chair. Marty is the president of Architecture Sarasota. He is an architect. He is an expert in historic preservation, and he's an expert on climate adaptation. The man could run the whole damn thing himself. Before they begin their deliberations, Marlon said the city was gonna do a comprehensive engineering study of the whole. The Karen study that was done a few years ago was not comprehensive, even though Kelly Franklin uses it as an example of how the wonderful condition of the hall. That study did not look at the interior condition of the walls or the floor under the building. And we already know there's leakage. There is seepage coming out from the groundwater through the floors. So that may delay the committee's deliberations. They had a tour scheduled of the hall so that they could get a personal view of the condition of the hall on the 29th, but that was canceled because of Vidalia, and they haven't rescheduled it. And unfortunately, Marlon has not provided the task force with any of the materials that he's promised at the 15th meeting. On the 24th of August, we had a tour of the Van Wezel by about 10 people from McClellan Park. It's just amazing how well the staff is doing these tours now. They really have developed a rhythm, a momentum to these tours, and they're doing an excellent job. And so the people who go on the tours are coming away with a clear idea, a clear understanding of the ADA compliance issues or non-compliance issues, and the acoustic issues that can't be fixed in the hall. And also the old shows that come through. And I don't think there's much public discussion about that. This is the brand new brochure for this season, and Hamilton is the big hit that's coming. Hamilton is 8 years old. It's not a first run show, gang. And who knows what condition this show is in, because one of the things that people who go on these tours learn is that these shows gradually get smaller and smaller and smaller as the tours go on. And at some point, these shows are even sold. they're no longer owned by the original producers. And so the show is redone entirely, not just recast, but the setting is done, the script is changed in some instances. So these people who are going on these tours are getting an idea of that and how that affects our ability to give our audiences the best kind of theater.
Ken, when you say smaller, we're talking smaller sets, smaller cans?
Yes,
Shorter songs?
yeah. Less set pieces, fewer set pieces. They may be made out of material rather than a solid material.
So it's getting ratty and.
Yeah.
The Lion King was significantly diminished in size comparatively.
Yeah. I asked Mary Bensel for a report on what happened during the hurricane at Dahlia. There was some water intrusion in the grand foyer, and there was some water intrusion also in the stage door and the security guard areas. And of course, the Founders Lounge flooded again. But it was a relatively easy cleanup. But it makes the point that if we had really been hit in that area, that building would have taken quite a bit of water inside of the building. And so hopefully the engineering study will make that clear. There's a community workshop for the players lease at Payne Park Auditorium on the 11th of September at 5:30, packed Payne Park Auditorium. And Architecture Sarasota has several interesting things going on. They're doing a comprehensive update of the cultural resource survey that was done in 1997 and updated in 2010, which is intended to find overlooked sites and expanding the inventory in the existing study of regional and statewide resources of the Sarasota School of Architecture. And all of this is going to be digitized and put in the geospatial database so that everybody will have access to it. Beginning in March of 2024, they have a series of events and activities called Modern by Design, highlighting contemporary and forward-thinking modern design and exploring forward-thinking or impacting the architecture of the built environment. And then there's also, they're making a request of the public called Moderns That Matter. You can go on their website and get more information about this. But the public is encouraged to nominate their favorite buildings, places, and spaces that make Sarasota modern, and that starts this month.
Okay.
Can I just ask you a quick question? It was brought up by, where are they with, what is your sense of the fountains in Sarasota? I mean, if there was discussion about taking them from parks and putting them into public art. Do you have
I
a?
don't know.
All right, listen, interest of time, I've got one comment, and that is on the art, the sculpture in the roundabouts. My personal view is that if it's $400,000 to make this happen, that would be the best $400,000. Maybe it's extortion on the part of, that's a wrong word. But maybe it's a dear price to pay to get those, but they were purposely constructed, artistically done for the roundabouts. And to make an artistic comment here, it could be one element that differentiates Sarasota from other cities. So it's not that, one, they were designed specifically for that location. Two, I mean, it's part of our fabric. And if it's a $400,000 mistake or $500,000, write a check, you know. And
I
I think
agree with you, David.
Marlon, I think asked, if I'm not mistaken, in a city commission meeting, he said, if the commission directs me to do it, I'll do it. My vote is to encourage the commission to give that direction to him, and rather than sit around wringing our hands for 9 months, having committees and looking at alternative sites and stuff like that. It's unfortunate, but let's do it.
I agree with you. The city has been buying cheap claptrap for years. We do not have a world-class collection of public art. And we're now moving into a different level of public art. And some of what the And it's gonna cost more. It's gonna cost a lot more.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Jamie, you've been busy.
Yeah, just a reminder, upcoming workshop on Thursday, October 19th. To be at Goey Hall again from 4 to 7. Gist of the workshop is gonna be basically how quickly Sarasota is growing and how do we make sure that we keep this a viable, vibrant, and livable place for everybody. We have some, I think, a really good lineup of speakers and people in the know in the city. We have the Chief of Police, Pat Robinson. And also we're gonna ask, how is this affecting our downtown businesses, and Wake Ribbon will cover that. We have Aaron Silk from the Economic Development Corporation. How's it affecting property values? We have Drayton Saunders from Michael Saunders. Speaking of insurance and rising costs, we have somebody to cover that too, Joe Thompson. And then from a legal standpoint, we have Diana Seda from Onyx Company. So we have a pretty good turnout so far. We've only sent a couple of marketing pieces. The first one went over exceptionally well. The second one, I kind of pulled it on the timing. It was supposed to be the Tuesday before the storm, so I had her push it back. So I think the second message may have got lost a little bit. We still have several more opportunities to send it out, so I think we'll get a full house. So sign up if you have.
Question in terms of now that we have, the lineup here, the speakers and so forth finalized, and we ask them to speak, but oftentimes with prepared questions that the team has put together, would it be appropriate to send out a notice to the member reps and ask them to submit any questions that they would like that could then be part of the pre-package? I mean, we tend to come up with some questions, but I think asking the different parts, because when you think about the range all the way from, South Palm, Trail and East, we have a very diverse range too. So I think making sure we have questions that reflect that.
Okay, I think we've got a great lineup, and I talked to Pat Robinson today. He's enthusiastic about presenting and so forth, so I think we've got.
Yeah, like Dave was saying last time, it was a little bit different format than we've done before, where we usually have the moderator ask each person questions. We're just gonna give each speaker a set amount of time. And then we're gonna have questions at the end that people are gonna put on their postcards, note cards, I should say, instead of just being kind of willy-nilly hands up in the air, because that sometimes gets a little out of control.
Okay, Patrick Greenspace.
One thing I do have to report is I did hear back from Candy Peterson, who's in the Parks and Rec, and asked the question of the list of city parks in our DSC area. So they have the list of parks in the entire city, but this was to be able to give her some feedback on the amenities in the downtown parks. And so the plan was, so now that she gave a spreadsheet, I've been going through that, looking at that, and then the plan is to then schedule a meeting to have Candy come in and talk about that and invite through a kind of a open workshop thing specifically on park amenities in our downtown area, and then post that somewhere downtown and get some feedback on that so that she can update that and begin to put that into a planning thing. So, how many benches and where do they need water fountains or not, or dog walking things like that. So we want to get feedback focused on the downtown parks. At least those are some of the smaller. So that's what we stand for.
Okay. Peter, on homeless and health and safety, you've got the report.
I can combine those kinds of things. There's been four of us, Catherine, Jamie, David, and I, as a result of an outreach by Officer Danny Robbins, who's a community service officer in the Sarasota Police Department, on behalf of Chief Trochet, wanted to know if there was a group, and he was looking at DSCA, who could resurrect a community watch program. Pre-pandemic, there were several community watch programs, and they have fallen by the wayside, and there really isn't very much of a community watch going on at the moment. So David and Jamie and Catherine and I started meeting, probably 9 months ago now, it's been a while, to get through just exactly what this would take, what it would look like, who would be involved, and how would we do it. And so we've gotten to this point now, and there's a handout in your, oh, it's up there, okay. So the first thing we did was we said, well, you know, if DSCA is gonna do this, do we have any reason to do it? Is it within our purpose? Do we have any authority? And of course, the place that you find the most telling is the Articles of Incorporation in DSCA, which talks about working cooperatively with local law enforcement agencies on pedestrian safety and crime control. Also looking at the other things that communication among various agencies with the police department. So we felt it was within the purview for DSCA to make an effort to look at it. And then we started to look at, well, what would we want it to be? So we put a vision statement together, which is on there. And basically, a vision statement is one of those statements, if you write enough of them, you know, they're never attainable, but it really sounds good and makes the rest of us feel good. And so it's an exemplary walk, watch, and inform volunteer program. So actually, those are the key words within the vision statement: walk, watch, and inform volunteer program. And then we started to look at, okay, what's the mission? The mission then becomes getting neighbors to unite to create a comfortable and pleasant experience for all the residents and visitors to the DSCA neighborhood. Once we said that, the DSC neighborhood became an issue for us to do this program. It's a huge area, much bigger than what we wanted to try to see what we could do. So we worked with SPD and then amongst ourselves, and we developed a smaller area to pilot a program in. So this is really a City Watch pilot program, and with defined boundaries. And it references page 2 there, and I don't think that got on the no, it didn't, and that may have been
described.
Yeah, but we do have a defined boundary. I'll send this around. It's a much smaller area, and it really goes from about Boulevard of the Arts between Tamiami and Central down to Fruitville and expands out to Orange and goes along the bayfront. It's a much smaller, manageable area with a number of condominiums and volunteer access within that area. And so then we started to put some goals together, create a volunteer administrative management group, which is the 4 of us and Danny Robinson, the police officer. And now we're at the point where we need to expand that to just double. We're hoping to double it to 10 people who will manage this program over the course of its initial life anyway. And then second, create a training module that provides guidance for an orientation and training program for the volunteers, along with with the printed materials, and an app by which the volunteers can access easily on their cell phones or smartphones, whatever they want to use, to report things that they see on their dog walk. And it's not this, and I want to make it very clear, because in the beginning it was, oh yeah, we need to report all those homeless people on the street. Well, no, this isn't a homeless report program. If you see a crack on the sidewalk and you're not familiar with the Quick Fix city website, that's another way to get it there, but they could do that as well. So at this point, I felt that we were getting to the point we needed to get board approval to do this. I mean, we are out here, this little ad hoc group, trying not to make any promises, but put together a real comprehensive program. So at this point, I am going to make a motion, look for a second, and open it up for discussion. And the motion is the ad hoc managing directors group requests that the DSCA Board of Directors approve the establishment of a City Watch pilot program within the responsibilities of the DSCA Health and Safety Committee. In other words, we think this belongs in the Health and Safety Committee, and this would function as a subcommittee of that group that would report back to the board through well, right now, Catherine's committee, Safety and Health.
Second.
Okay, great. I'll open it up for discussion with only one more caveat. And the reason we wanted board approval, the reason we wanted it formally in the DSCA purview is that all of us then become protected under the not-for-profit provisions for volunteers. So if somebody gets in a little trouble, they're not gonna lose their house over it.
The only comment I would make is I did have a word with Marlon about this, and Marlon is on board and supports police chief, so he's aware of this and support.
Peter, I applaud the idea and proposal here, just from a board approval standpoint. You were asking us to approve a program by which we have one of 4 pages. One of 4 pages. The first page you reference the map on page 2, and you reference objectives, strategies on pages 3 and 4. And I think if we are approving that, if you think that there's more of the details that need to be fleshed out, and you want the board to say, yes, this is a great idea, go forward and come back for a final thing.
That's what we're saying. I mean, essentially what we're saying is, we want you to know we're doing it, and we want you to assign it to the Health and Safety Committee, which will then pick up the reports on, because we're meeting a couple times a month right now to expedite this.
We have a final package that says.
And I didn't want to attach it. I mean, so for the first goal, I mean, we not only have the goals, we have the objective written, we have this, have a list of strategies on how to reach the objective. We have an evaluation plan for each of it. So those are the kinds of things that would come back to the board.
And I think it would be good if we could send that out to all of our member reps and as a draft.
After we report to the board.
Well, no, I mean, we're saying, please proceed with this in a draft format with these details. And I think the board and other member reps would be able to read it and send comments back. Again, part of this is engagement with our members, all members, through the member reps, and saying, this is a draft proposal brought before the board. I think the board can say, yes, we endorse this to establish this with board feedback. So, if you would take that as a friendly gesture.
I don't really have an issue with that. In fact, we will be going to the member rep saying, hey, we need volunteers. We want to come into your condominium and train some volunteers, and we've got the training module, and we'll help you do it, or we'll do it.
And this is the way to get
So,
them
right. So that's a good point.
notified early on,
Right.
and so that they asked me for input early on, now they're coming back.
Is this a pilot program or a perpetual?
This is a pilot program, and if it works, we'll probably come back and say, this is the model we want to use for all of the DSCA, and we'll be willing to share it with the other 33 neighborhoods in the city if they want it.
Any fund effect out of this?
We
expenses?
propose to do this right now without spending any DSCA money. However, we are approaching somebody like, if this is the SPD's request, they want to spend some of their foundation money buying us some T-shirts or doing printed materials or something like that. So that'll be in the plan as we go along.
Okay, so we have a motion do we have a motion on the floor?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and we had a second.
Right.
So, shall we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, okay. Moving along, Roger has left on transportation. I'm not aware of anything, possibly food development or whatever. Zoning code, I think we talked a little about that. Bob, anything on the Bay Park?
Sarasota survived Adelia very well, so that's about all I have.
Okay. On the Rosemary,
Did they reschedule the community meetings?
I haven't heard.
Because they had 2 scheduled that last Thursday. There was a Thursday, they had a noon and an evening community meetings that were scheduled, and they canceled those for the hurricane. So I just wondered if I haven't seen it.
okay, on the Rosemary, all I have is I'm beside myself. The Rosemary Park, there had been discussion about having it done by the holidays. It looks like there's some slippage. There's no building permit pulled at this point, and the timeline is, we're promised another timeline. I guess I'm feeling the Bay Park, phase 1 was done, and Bobby Jones is done. And Selby Gardens garage is done in the time that we can develop a quarter-acre park. So stay tuned. I'm hopeful somehow to get some trees planted there. But we're working on it, and that's all I've got. Jamie, Annika, hi there.
Hey,
Hey.
I'm here. Hey, everyone. I'm Anya Comantius, as you know. I'm Assistant Liaison to Jamie. And I'm with Berg Simpson Law Firm. We're a construction defect litigation law firm, and we represent associations and condominiums with shoddy workmanship. I'm going to introduce the platinum members. Steve Shaw, right there with Hotwire. Do you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Annika. Our growth continues at a great pace here in downtown Sarasota. We're happy to announce we're very close to signing several high-rise properties that will join the Hotwire network for high-speed internet and television services. And I think a lot of communities are beginning to realize that, as you discussed, the rising costs of insurance, the state mandates, everything that is starting to affect the downtown kind of community. They're looking ways to save money. And they're realizing that bulk agreements for internet and television is a way to do that and save serious money, hundreds of dollars per resident per year. So again, we thank you for the opportunity to be a part of DSCA and anything we can do to help, we're here to do. Thanks.
Thank you. And then next we have Fred. Brady.
Always a pleasure to be with this august body. As you may not know, we had the misfortune of having to evacuate Alderman Oaks during the hurricane because we're in the level A. We evacuate with Lido Beach. It's the most successful. Very experienced of that 2 years in a row. We share your mission, educational and betterment. And I'm going to have brochures. It sounds a little boring on the edge, but it's of importance to many of us who are our friends, associates, and families, and that's a seminar at Alderman Oaks on Medicare. Public service announcement: do not count on Medicare for long-term care needs. That's assisted living, nursing homes. Do not. It does not, never has, and never will cover long-term care. So come and see us. We have a new program of short-term stays, which is new to us. I encourage you to refer your friends and families to downtown establishment that the land was purchased 50 years ago. So we had this vision for a long time. Thank you.
Why did you evacuate? Are you in
We're
zone A? Is that
required.
why?
We're in zone A, and
Zone
we're
A, okay.
required.
Gotcha.
We had 3 visits from SPD to encourage us to evacuate.
Thanks, Fred. Oh, and Kristen. Yeah.
Hi everyone, back to Macon. Thanks for having me. Just again, you guys know me, but I'm with Core Marketing Solutions, and I have a new client. It's Finch Roof Consulting. They do full service roofing, but really anything that your association would need, whether it be insurance and legal assistance, to plumbing, restoration services. If you had any leaks come out during the storm, I know sometimes that pops up with the wind-driven rain. Plumbing and roofing, of course, just let me know. We also have engineering with Subitech Consulting. One of my clients, I wasn't stepping on your toes.
Hey, everybody, Terry Phelps with Subitech Consulting. We are a full-service engineering firm. We can help you with pretty much 98% of what an association would need. Anything from milestone, structural integrity reserve, all the new legislation. If you had concretes falling, seawalls, decks, docks, pretty much everything that you would need, even traditional reserve studies, we can help you with that. So we're here. Thanks.
I actually did want to say one more thing for anybody who doesn't know, that all of our associate members, or I'm sorry, the platinum members have tables at our workshops as well. And if you guys want any information, we have such a variety of businesses that support us, and they all have tables. The platinums have tables, and it's a good way for you to go. And if you have any questions about anything in specific, you have engineering or legal questions, you go visit them at their booths too. So don't forget that.
Okay,
That's it.
all right,
Yeah,
thank you. Do we have any member rep comments to wrap, questions, comments as we close off? If not, we're gonna end 3 minutes early and open the bar. So, shall we consider the meeting adjourned? Thanks, everybody.
They already walked off, so yes. Okay.